Hello everyone, I am Heather and this is Heather Travels. Thank you for clicking on this video today. Recently, I asked people to submit questions for me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and I did get some questions, and so I'm going to answer them in today's video. Okay, the first question comes from Cider, and his question is, if you could take a trip each season of the year, where would you go each time? And I thought this was a really great question. Okay, now, first I would say that I probably wouldn't go to the exact same place every year, but I can give you an idea of a type of place that I would want to go to in each season. Okay, for winter, I would probably want to go to someplace warm. So winter is probably when I would most like to take a cruise to like the Caribbean or the Bahamas, or it is when I would like to go to Walt Disney World. January and February are probably especially the times that the crowds are still going to be at least a little bit lower at Walt Disney World or Disneyland, or maybe Southern California or something else in Florida. That's probably what I would like to do in the winter. In the spring, this one's challenging because my son Ben has very bad spring tree pollen allergies. And so we really try to avoid, well, I say we try, but 2 times now we've gone to Walt Disney World at spring break and his allergies were horrible. He really struggles with his eyes. And so for spring, I would say our best option actually probably is a cruise, because you don't have issues with your allergies when you're out at sea. There's no pollen out there. So a cruise is probably a really good one for spring. There's the possibility that I might want to like travel to like maybe a big city, especially like a European city. Like if we're talking about our spring break and it's like a week, you know, I had thought for a while about maybe going to London for spring break this year. That obviously isn't happening, but you know, so something like that might be good too. In summer, that's the only time of year really that I'm kind of okay with the idea of doing a road trip or driving somewhere or maybe taking the train. And for whatever reason, I'm just very attracted to doing things around the United States in the summer. Like a lot of places that, you know, either theme or amusement parks, not at Disney, it's too hot, but I mean like, you know, that's probably one that are only open in the summer. So say like Hershey Park or Dollywood or Valley Fair, or going to Wisconsin Dells. Although we do like to go to Wisconsin Dells in the winter too when we go to the indoor theme parks. Or, you know, maybe Universal California or Disneyland in California. Or going to visit other states. You know, obviously summer is really the only time you can go to Alaska. So that's on my wish list for summer. Also, Northern Europe cruise, like to do a cruise in Northern Europe. That's something that you can only do in summer. So that's something I would want to do in the summer. And otherwise, you know, things like that. So there's some definite places that you can only travel to in summer or really are only worth traveling to in summer that I would probably do in summer. And then for fall, I really want to go someplace where I can really take advantage of the pretty fall colors. So like last year when we went on our Northern Adventure fall trip, I'll put a link to that up here. That was a really great fall trip. Places where, you know, it's going to be like the leaves and fireplaces and hot cocoa and, you know, think it's like got a cozy feel. I would like to do an Eastern Canada cruise in the fall and take advantage of the fall colors. So I'd want to go someplace in the fall where I can see the fall colors. But even like Japan has beautiful fall colors, and there's places in Europe that might be really cool. Going to New York City might be fun in the fall and go to like Broadway shows and through Central Park and stuff like that. So hopefully that answers your question, Cider. I mean, I gave you a lot of things there, but that kind of gives an idea of what I'm thinking for each season. Megan asked the next question, and her question was, what was the very first trip you ever went on? And I had to look it up, but thankfully my dad has given me records, and the very first trip I ever went on was when I was less than a year old. We drove in the car to Springfield, Illinois, which is like where Abraham Lincoln is from. The current Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum was not built yet. I would like to go back to Springfield sometime to see that, but that's apparently where we went. And I looked on my dad's records, and actually the first 5 trips I took as a child, which were all before the age of 10, were all in the car, and they were all us driving as a family somewhere. We went to Kentucky a couple times to visit my uncle Tim, who was in the military there. We went out to Wyoming to visit some friends of my parents. So we drove somewhere within a few states of Wisconsin. The 6th trip I ever took was the first time I ever flew. And you can hear about that one in this video from my Misadventures in Travel series. Okay, Shadow Star Play asks, what is the longest trip you ever took? Okay, if we're counting this as a trip, the longest I ever took would have been when I did my study abroad in London in the fall of 1993. Is that right? I think that's right. 1993, when I was there for months. I mean, I was there for basically the whole fall semester. And then I also did some traveling beyond London. So, but if you don't count that as a trip, then I guess the next one would be, well, also kind of similar. I did a homestay study abroad program in Ireland in the summer between my junior and senior year of high school. But I guess if we're talking about something that's not necessarily an educational program like that, where I was actually stationed in one place and living in a place, then it might be the time that my dad and I drove to Canada. We went to Quebec and we went to Maine, and it was a big long road trip. And that was in the fall of 92, maybe? Or it might have been the summer trip that we took. It was another big driving trip with my dad where we also went to Niagara Falls, into Canada, to New York, Connecticut, New York City. We went a whole bunch of places and we drove, and that was a pretty long trip too. And that was that was when Andrew was 2. It was me, my dad, and Andrew. And that was probably, so that would have been 1999. That was another trip, 2 big long road trips. Somebody else asked, have you ever traveled abroad alone? Yes. When I was, 2 things. On those 2 homestay, or those 2 educational programs I mentioned, when I was in Ireland when I was 16, in the summer of 1989, I was staying with a host family, the Birminghams, and I went to school, but it was summer, and it was a program that they put on for the students. We were from the United States, France, and Spain, and we were learning about Irish history, culture, heritage, that kind of thing. So we actually had it in a school that they rented the space, but the school was closed for the summer. But during that time, I did a lot of traveling about in Dublin and the area around Dublin by myself. I mean, I would take the Dart into Dublin and do things in Dublin by myself and go all around in Dublin by myself. So there was that. And then when I was in London, after my classes ended in my London term, I went by myself across the English Channel on the ferry, and then by train through Germany. I got off in Cologne, went to visit the Cologne Cathedral. I went all the way to Vienna on the train and visited and stayed with my pen pal Kirsten and her family in Vienna. I went around in Vienna by myself, and then I took the train back alone all the way back to London again. So I did all that by myself. Next question, could you live in another country for the rest of your life? Absolutely. I would actually very much like to do that. I like the United States fine, but I have very seriously considered moving to another country, and it would definitely probably be in Europe or the UK. There's a lot of benefits to living in places other than the United States that make it an easy decision for me. I would definitely like to live in another country. I'm actually kind of disappointed I haven't had that opportunity with my kids. I mean, the big obstacle obviously is having a job, finding a job and money and being able to afford it. If I could afford it and could find a job in another place, I'd do it like that. Okay, Jesse asks, what makes you choose one destination over another? And are there places you would take a repeat visit to or not? What makes me choose one over another is there's a lot of factors that go into that. And I guess one of the things is price and cost, seasonal variations in cost. It might not necessarily be choosing the destination over a different destination, but maybe choosing when to go to the destination is kind of a bigger factor for me. There are definitely places that I'm like, oh, I really want to go there, but that list is super long. And there are definitely destinations where I say, I have no interest in going there whatsoever. And I guess that's just a gut thing. That's just my personal interests thing. If you watch our Universal Yums videos, which I'll put a link to our Universal Yums playlist up here, with each box that we get of the snacks and treats, we talk about the country that they come from, and we all say whether we would want to visit that country or not. And some of them, I mean, it's just like an instinct. Some of them were like, oh yeah, absolutely, I really want to go there. And others, like this last one was Brazil. We were like, nope, I have no interest in going there whatsoever. So, I mean, there's just places that we're attracted to and places that we're not. Are there places that you would take a repeat visit to or not? Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's places I've been back to repeatedly. I've been to Disney World 7 times. I've been to San Francisco, I don't know, 5. I've been to New York City multiple times. I've been a lot of places over and over again. I've been in London 3 times. Yeah, I've been to Dublin twice. There's many places that I will go back to again and again and again because I like them so much. And there's places that I have already been to multiple times that I would very definitely go back to again. I've been to Washington, D.C. 6, 7 times. I definitely want to go back there, take my kids. As far as like places I would not repeat going to, I can't really think of anything, actually. I can't think of anything where I'm like, yeah, I've been there, done that. I don't need to do it again. And I guess the reason for that is because there's so many places that I went to when I was younger, before I had kids, that my kids have not been to, that I want them to see. Like, for example, I personally don't need to see the Grand Canyon or Niagara Falls again. I've been there already, but my kids have not been there. And so I do want to go to it again so that they can see it and I can experience it with them. So does that make sense? I can't think of any place that I'm absolutely like, no, I'm never going there again. I can't think of anything like that. Okay, Eunice asks, what changes to cruising do you think will result from the pandemic? Awesome question. And I actually just filmed another video. I'm not sure which of these will go up first, probably that one. So I'm going to refer you back to my video about the changes that I think are going to happen to travel after the pandemic compared to what happened after 9/11. In that video, I say this, and I'm going to say the same thing again. I am actually going to refer you to 3 of my YouTube friends who have already done videos about this and done a very good job. One is my friend Jason at the Summit Push. He did 2 videos about this, and I will link his channel up here, which I think were terrific, and he covered every possible thing that could happen to cruising, and I think he's right about all of them. Tony from Lalita Loca, he has done quite a few videos about what's going to change with cruising, and he does daily cruise updates. So check out Lalita Loca for that. Cruise with Ben and David recently did a video about what changes they think are going to happen with the cruise industry too. I should mention that on the day that I am filming this, the CDC just announced another suspension of cruise travel for 100 days from today, which today is April 10th, the day I'm filming this. This video might not go up for a while. That's the biggest obstacle, is when will cruise ships be able to go places again? When will anybody even be allowed to cruise again? And also, where will they be able to go? Because a big question is, are you going to be able to go to certain ports? Jason mentioned in one of his videos that he thinks they're going to see our increasing reliance on cruise ships utilizing their own private islands because they won't have the restrictions about docking there. And the other big thing, I guess, that you're probably going to see, 2 big things. One has to do with like the factors on the ship, like people not serving themselves in the buffets, changes to the air ventilation systems, possibly reduced passenger capacity Those kind of things I think you're going to see changed on the ships themselves. Increased cleanliness and sanitation, although cruise ships are already so clean, it's ridiculous. And then the other thing I think you're going to see is changes to the boarding process and who will be allowed to board, and more stringent guidelines for, like health questionnaires and things like that. You already have to fill out a health questionnaire when you go on a cruise anyway, but I think they're going to be asking even more detailed, specific questions, and possibly even screening and testing people with either their temperature or something. Trisha asks, what is the best round trip train route with easy starting point, great stops and destinations? She lives where I live. I'm kind of wondering if she means from here. That's probably what she means. Unfortunately, we can't get a train right from where we live. The closest would be, if you're going to go west, you can go to Minneapolis, St. Paul. And we've actually there's a couple from there that I would recommend, and that's going to be the Empire Builder, the westbound Empire Builder from Minneapolis, St. Paul. One time, my dad and my son Andrew and I did a round trip to Montana, and we went out to basically Glacier National Park in Montana. You would have to rent a car when you get there. But I remember on that trip, the car rental place actually just left the car for us at the train station, and we were able to get it right there. And then we could drive all around Glacier National Park. So that was a good one. And that's just, you're on the train. It's like a day. So that is one that I would recommend. You can also take the Empire Builder all the way to Seattle or Portland, Oregon, and then do things in Seattle and Portland, Oregon, and then come back on the train. That's going to be a couple days. So you might want to consider a sleeper if you don't want to sleep in coach. But keep in mind, train seats are much wider and more comfortable than airplane seats. So you have a lot more space and room. You got a footrest and, everything. So sleeping, Trisha and I have actually taken a train trip together, so she knows this. We've slept on a train and coach together, so she already knows this. So if you remember what that was like, Trish, it's not horrible. It's not like sleeping on a plane for that long. So that would be another one. Otherwise, if you want to go south or east, you have to go to Chicago. You can get the Empire Builder as close as Toma, or that would be the closest driving to us, and then get it to Chicago and then change trains in Chicago. A couple that I would recommend that are quote unquote easy is going to Colorado, going to Denver, and then getting a car and doing stuff in Colorado. I very strongly considered doing that with Ben, because he really wants to see the mountains. For that, I would actually recommend driving straight down from where we live to Osceola, Iowa, and getting the westbound train from Chicago rather than driving to Chicago, because you're actually going backwards. And then another one I guess I would really recommend, and we have done this too, is round trip to Washington, D.C. from Chicago. That's a nice, easy train ride, and it's a great way to get to Washington, D.C. to go see D.C. There's a couple different route options actually between Chicago and Washington, D.C. And then as Trish already knows, we've done round trips. She and I have done round trip to New York City and back. So that's another good one. We also did a couple of round trips, and she'd like this. She went on her honeymoon there to New Orleans. Round trip from Chicago to New Orleans is another really good option on Amtrak. So, and I've actually would recommend that to people who want to cruise out of New Orleans, because you can take the train to New Orleans and then take a cruise from New Orleans and then take the train back. So there you go. Okay, and then my last question comes from Laura, and she asked, is there a good time to score cheap airfare? When, what airline, what website, etc.? Okay, I'm going to refer, Laura, I probably ran out of these again, but I'm going to refer to this fairly lengthy video called Booking Flights. I used my son's travels to Europe and the complications he had with his flights as an example, and I talk at length about the best way to book flights. So Laura, please check out that video, because I talk about this tons, and I talk about different websites and all that stuff. But here's some real quick tips for you. I also did another video in that same series, in my budget and planning series, 4 quick ways to save money on air travel, and I'll kind of repeat those here for you. One is always book directly with the airline. Use the other search engine sites like Travelocity, Trivago, Expedia, Kayak, any of those are good for like your initial search. But when you actually buy the tickets, go directly to the airline's website. The price is going to be the same. Okay, you're not going to get any better deal by booking on those other things. And they might try to sell you on like a package and bundling, but it's really not any cheaper. So you really are getting your best rate and also your safest, most protected thing, if you will, by booking directly with the airline. So find the fare that you want on one of those search sites, but then go directly to Delta or American or whatever and book it straight through them. Okay, the other thing I would say is the whole thing about, oh, you have to book on Tuesday or you have to book on this. That's a myth. Airfare changes constantly. It's impossible to say whether booking on this particular day or at this particular time is going to get you the cheaper airfare. Basically, what you want to do is you want to look at it over time, kind of get a sense of how much do tickets typically cost for this particular route, and then just check it every day until you see one that you're happy with, and then just get it. That's my best advice to you. Kayak will show you a prediction. Like if you're trying to decide, should I buy my tickets like right now or should I wait a week? Kayak will give you a little buy now or wait. And that can be kind of helpful if you have the flexibility to, you don't have to buy them this minute. There's two things that are really going to make the biggest difference in airfare cost. One is what day of the week you fly and what month of the year you fly, which is completely dependent on that destination. So flying to the same city in different months of the year is going to vary widely. If you want to see what I'm talking about, look at Google Flights, and Google Flights will give you a calendar showing you the airfare between two cities over the whole calendar, and you can see when it's the peak time for travel to that particular city, the price is going to go way up. So if you can be flexible with your dates and go to places off season, that's going to save you money. Then the other thing is, don't travel on the weekend. Just don't travel on the weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and even into Monday are the most expensive days of the week to fly all the time, no matter what the route. If you can fly on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it's always going to be cheaper. The other trick to getting the best price on airfare is how far in advance you are buying the tickets. The magic window for domestic airfare is 54 days prior. That's pretty specific. So basically you're looking at about 6 to 7 weeks ahead. If you buy a lot sooner than that, the price is probably going to go down. If you buy later than that, the price is going to go up. So you want to be out at least a month, like I always say like in the 1 to 4 months before your trip range, you should be able to get a decent price for domestic travel. Okay. International travel is different. That's much longer. You should really be looking at buying your tickets for international travel. It's like 100 and something days out. So you need to be looking for your international travel flights at least 3 to like 6 months ahead of time, ideally. If you buy any closer to your trip than that, the fares are going to go up. So that's the other thing that I would tell you about flights. So thank you to everyone who submitted questions for this travel Q&A video. I really appreciate it. I hope that these tips and suggestions were helpful to you. I really appreciate you watching this video today. If you liked it, please be sure to give me a thumbs up down below. And if you have not subscribed to my channel, please be sure to subscribe. Thanks everyone for watching and safe travels.